Ryan Day is looking for his fourth starting quarterback as Ohio State's head coach to follow in the lineage that right now is Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud, Kyle McCord, and Will Howard. And I just realized in real time I did that math wrong. It's five quarterbacks, actually. 614-350-3315. If you want more bad math, but a lot of good insight for Ohio State after its first day of fall camp, I'm Steven. That's Stefan. And that's Andrew. There are three of us. I do know that math directly. I was watching the quarterbacks directly, so I guess I want to start with you, Stefan, because you were watching the offense. So you're kind of proxy watching the quarterbacks. If I asked you to give a power rankings based off their performance today, not what we think is going to end up happening, just their performance today, 1 through 3, go.
I'd probably say Lincoln 1, Tavian 2, Julian 3, and I'd be open to a debate about swapping Tavian and Lincoln. But this is kind of the thing that we keep talking about with this quarterback competition of, I think we all know Julian's the most talented guy. I think we know that he's the 5-star who's the number one quarterback in the class and who is still the favorite to be the starting quarterback for Ohio State. I think whether you ask people in the building, whether you ask us, we would probably tell you Julian's the favorite to be the starter for this team. The problem is he's not grasping the job. He's not taking the job. And the longer he doesn't take the job, the more we start looking at I guess Lincoln more than Tavian, but even Tavian's catching our attention a bit. But the more we're going to start looking at Lincoln and saying, I mean, yeah, that guy's talented, but this guy keeps outperforming him in practice. And obviously you don't want to overreact to one pat at practice, but I think throughout most of the spring we were saying Lincoln's looking pretty good in practice, and Julian's kind of had his ups and downs. They both had ups and downs, but from the practices that we saw, it looked like Lincoln was maybe impressive more than we thought. And then the spring game happened, and we said, okay, Julian's this team's starting quarterback. Look at how good he was. But that wasn't necessarily because Lincoln was bad in the spring game. I think they were both pretty good in the spring game. And then we come out here, and it kind of looked a bit like some of those spring practices where Lincoln was outperforming him. And you're kind of asking yourself, sitting here wondering, like, at what point in practice is Julian going to take the job? Not just be the guy who's the best, who's the most talented, who's going to get the job. When is he going to take the job? And that's what Ryan Day keeps talking about when he talks about this quarterback competition. Maybe it doesn't happen until later in fall camp. Maybe it happens during Friday's second practice. We'll see what happens there. But you're kind of you're waiting for that next step from Julian. And I don't know if I'd be concerned that it hasn't happened yet. But we keep talking about it. At some point, it gets repetitive, and you're wondering, is it going to happen? Is he going to grasp this job? And that's kind of, I think, the biggest story of this fall camp.
This is day one of 3 straight days we're getting ready to be out here. And then you add in what we saw in the spring, where Julian had the better spring game, but the week before, I think, at the scrimmage, Lincoln had a better scrimmage. We all think Julian Sang is going to be the starting quarterback. We've had texter 614-350-3315, Andrew, ask if Lincoln wins this job, is that more because because Julian's not good enough, or maybe Lincoln is just really that good? I think it's because Lincoln is just really that good. How many more days? Let's just say, what would need to happen over the next 2 days if we are all so confident that Julian's going to be the starting quarterback? And again, they're not in pads, and there's 30 of these to go. But what would need to happen while we are out here watching full practices that would at least open your idea to the chance of maybe Lincoln's the starting quarterback?
Yeah, I think there could be a couple of different things. I think it could be as simple as Julian just doesn't play all that well, and Julian just does not look good. I think it could be something as simple as Lincoln looks awesome, right? Lincoln's making every throw. I think, I was watching defense today. I think the number one thing that I kind of was looking at with the quarterbacks, I wasn't focusing on them, but the number one thing that I thought in my head was just mixed bag. I think you saw, there was a really nice deep ball that Lincoln threw. Julian had a really nice timing on a crossing pattern, and it just, but it didn't feel consistent. So if Lincoln puts together that consistency, and I think that is the word that Ryan Day is probably looking for, because consistency is what you need. You can't be living in this, peaks and valleys kind of world at quarterback. So if Lincoln shows that consistency, then I think we're talking, okay, this is something. I think if Julian, if the roles were inverse, right? If Julian looked so much better than Lincoln, what would our video be right now? It's over, it's done, it's Julian. We'd be no doubt this is Julian. We didn't see that, but because it was Lincoln, I think we're kind of baking in this time of Julian might be the more talented quarterback, so Lincoln, fair or unfair, might have to prove more. But I think that consistency is what is going to get him there, because I didn't see that really from Julian didn't really see it a ton from Lincoln today as well. I think you saw good and bad moments. But if Lincoln puts together a couple good practices, and again, they're not in pads right now, so like we'll see, as things get live, as linemen start hitting, as bullets start flying, we'll see if that changes things. But that consistency, to me, number one most important thing for either one of these quarterbacks, but specifically Lincoln.
I think one thing that kind of just sums it up, though, is like we all keep saying and thinking that Julian's going to be the starting quarterback. Then how come when we're coming to these practices, we're not leaving thinking that 100%?
It's the peaks and valleys of quarterback play for a young quarterback. Here's what's, and I was having this conversation with somebody. Ryan Day is looking for who can take command of this team. This is not a talent conversation, which I think is already a good thing. We're not talking about, is either this guy good enough to be the starting quarterback? No. When do you walk in the locker room and everybody's like, that's our guy? You talk to enough people, it feels like that guy's Julian. But that feels like, from a talent standpoint, it's like, oh, people think Julian's got the better arm. You saw it last year. He flashed all these things. But are people looking him in the eyes in the huddle and going, no, we believe in this dude? Because that's what happened with Will Howard. There's an element here of, was Will Howard a more talented quarterback than Kyle McCord? The NFL told us no. But do I think Kyle McCord could have pulled Ohio State out of the hole it was in after the Michigan loss to win a national title? I mean, we're looking at the banner back there. They got a bunch of new stuff in here. No. I think both of those things are a no. Will Howard cannot be as talented as someone, but that's not all there is to quarterback play. And that has, in some ways, impacted how Ryan Day is going about this. So if you think Julian's going to be the starting quarterback, then Julian Sand needs to command the huddle and be the starting quarterback. Because if he doesn't, then Lincoln Keenholz is going to start showing that it's about more than just his command. He's also pretty talented. I thought he had the best throw of the day. You mentioned it, the slot fade to Bryson Rodgers for a touchdown. Taven St. Clair had some good stuff. I thought he looked more in control than he did in the spring. Miles ahead of where he was when he first got here. I thought Julian Sand had a really good throw to Cardinal Tate down the sideline, which, again, showed off why we think he's going to be the starting quarterback. He also threw an interception to Davis Igbinosun where there was no receiver in sight. It was a bad throw and a bad read. So it's peaks and valleys. It's the first day of fall camp, so we don't want to overreact too much. But we do want to be honest. Lincoln was better than Julian Sand on day one. He was also better when we were in there in the spring, and then Julian was better at the spring game. So you're right, Andrew. Whoever can find that consistency quickly, because they're playing Texas week 1,
30 days.
That's the epitome of how this is going to go. 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. We were texting all types of stuff while we were in here, and we'll continue to do so. 2-week free trial, and we'll continue to talk about this on Buckeye Talk, wherever you find podcasts. Stefan, Andrew, and Steven. See ya.